And then I got some questions that he hasn't even seen yet, so this will be fun. Yeah, so let's pray. Heavenly Father, God, thank you for today. God, just once again, God, I remember just today looking up at the sky and seeing the clouds and the blue sky and just thinking of you and your creation, your handiwork, God, and just you are amazing. And so we love you. We thank you for all that you've done, God. Thank you for Adam. I pray for this time, God, you would help us to grow. You would teach us. And, God, we've done a lot of testimonies lately, and I just pray that this would be one that would speak to others, and you would continue to work. And, God, we would just be humble servants. God, we love you. We ask for this in your son, Jesus' name. Amen. Yes, could you please state your name and birthday for the audience, please?
My name's Adam. I was born in August on the 5th.
August 5th, okay. Y'all write that down. All right, so we'll kind of start about the same way we started. I'll have some additions. I know the youth for the past 2 Wednesday nights have been sharing testimonies. So time-wise, we got to stay within a time limit. So
You never do.
but why don't we'll start with testimony. How you came to faith?
Yeah, I've got some people call it a boring testimony. I don't think it is. I think it's faithfulness over from others that are really something. So I was a Christian growing up, but I wasn't a Christian at all. I had my baptism at 8 or 9. I don't really know exactly when, but it was at Pine Grove Baptist Church in Central Alabama, and I remember them having that, and I knew what the people were saying that were getting baptized, so I figured I could do the same thing, and their baptismal was cool. I wanted to go do that, so I did, and there was that. And then so I wasn't saved at all through high school, and the long version of my testimony goes through all the stuff in high school. But long and the short of it is I was a very selfish person, very self-centered person, and really that changed when I started. It wasn't going to church at all, but I started going to church. And I started going to church for the wrong reason. I was actually dating the pastor's daughter. It is not Brittany. That didn't last that lasted less than a month. But I kept going because I knew it was good to be in church. And I knew that was something that was a good thing to do. And I had been complimented on the fact that I was there. And I was like, I need to keep doing that. And then we had a I don't know what exactly they called it. Maybe a revival, maybe a homecoming. It was some special event where some other guy came and he did the sermon. And for some reason, I just understood the gospel that day. And that was the day. I drove home after that, and I sat in my dad's driveway for about 30 minutes just having a long conversation with the Lord. And that was the turning point at that point. Luckily, right about that time was summer camp, and I was going to get to go and see Brittany right after that, and it wasn't long after that we started talking, dating, getting married, and so on and so forth, and here we are. And really, it's interesting because I know I was prayed for. You know what I mean? Like, I know my family members had been praying for me. And I know that I had caused plenty of heartache, I think is a good word, in my family. And so my testimony is there's a lot about the stuff that I was in and all that stuff, but I really like to point towards the faithfulness of the believers in my family that were praying for me. And because that, to me, I'm super grateful for that, because that conviction wasn't, the guy that did that sermon, that pastor, he wasn't like this phenomenal speaker or anything. It's just it clicked that day. Right? That's the day I understood it. That's the day I understood that I wasn't going to earn my way into heaven. Like I was all into, at that point, I was all into apologetics and all this stuff, and I wanted to know everything I could. But it was that day where some country preacher from Cedar Bluff came down, right? And I mean, if you've been to Cedar Bluff, there ain't a lot to it, right? There's a bridge, a really good breakfast place on the lake, and that's it. But they got a little church, and from that point forward, I kind of waddled my way into the Christian faith. I was real slow about it, and I didn't really know where to go. I wasn't really plugged into a church in the way I should have been. And then a mentor really just showed up in my life after Brittany and I got married, and Phil Craddock. Phil Craddock spent a lot of time pouring into me and teaching me, and there's, I think, 2 people in here who know who Brother Phil is. Y'all know? Okay, so he really poured into me and taught me, and he's the one that baptized me. And I mean, just the difference from who I was to who I am isn't me changing so much as the Holy Spirit changing me from the inside out, right? I mean, it just, my desires are completely different. What I used to care about doesn't matter at all anymore. My primary focus is, and I've said this before, my primary focus and my mission, my number one focus every day is my family is with me in heaven. My wife and sons are with me in heaven. That's my primary. I come here, and obviously I want everybody in this church there with me. I want everybody in this community there with me. So I'm going to live in such a way because of the Holy Spirit in me and giving me those desires that I would never had when I was a teenager. There's zero care at all. But now that's all I care about. So.
Cool. Good deal. Appreciate that. You prompted a couple things while you were talking, so I want to kind of switch around. I'm not going to go just question for question. But first thing was, you mentioned a special speaker for homecoming. Are we supposed to bring a special speaker in for homecoming?
You're pretty special.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. All right. But I had it kind of later on in the questioning, and I know me and you have had lots of conversations, but you talked a couple times and mentioned church. Mm-hmm. I know this is for you. The Greek word ekklesia for church is the Greek word we see for church in the New Testament. And then just that being the case, and I actually have some stuff maybe planned for Sunday talking in church, but I just want to know kind of, I got a little bit taste of it as you were talking, but what does church mean to you? What does that word mean? How does that reflect in your life?
So church, when I was younger, was a duty. It was something I had to do. You say a box I had to check. That's still your term. I think it was, growing up, it was a thing. We would go to church up until my parents got split up. We would go to, and that was when I was 9. We would go to church. I wasn't paying attention. I showed up for the other kids there. We had a blast, right? But I had to sit. They didn't have a children's church, so we had to sit through the pastor, and that was kind of like, no offense, that was the worst part, right?
You kids are blessed.
It was awful. But I was sitting there, and I remember getting thumped and kicked and all these things. Be quiet, like that.
Pinched.
I didn't actually get pinched that much.
I got pinched.
I got thumped. My dad had a really mean skull thump. It would echo through the room. Everybody knew I was done talking at that point, right? He hadn't done that to me in years. But just the difference in then and, again, I went to church for the wrong reason when I was 19, and then I started going back to church for the wrong reason when I was 19. And then the difference in after the fact, where I went through discipleship with Brother Phil, and he taught me what the church is instead of what I'm supposed to be at church. Yeah. And so the church to me is the family of Christ that I am a part of, right? This isn't somewhere I go. This is something I get to be a part of. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's not even a task. I desire to be here, and the building's the building, but I desire to be with the people more than anything. So the church is the people, to me, I just love the people here.
Yeah. Good. Cool. Good deal. Kind of part of the testimony too. Tell us how you kind of got into ministry, because I know it wasn't your convention.
No, I didn't want to.
Yeah.
At all. Actually, was teaching class one night at Refuge. Well, it wasn't Refuge yet at that point, I don't think, was it? It was Hirschwiregrass Taekwondo. And Ricky Sowell, we were in his congregation for a while, and he started being interim at Calvary in Abbeville. And he came up to me during class, like we were in the middle of class. He was like, "Hey, come here for a minute." I was like, usually when a parent does that, it's a bad thing, right? And he's like, "Hey, come here, man. I got to run something by you." And I was like, "Oh, great. Here we go." So I walk over there, and I'm like, "Yeah, man, what's up?" And it turned out that he was like, "Hey, man, I think you need to think about being the youth pastor up there." I was like, "Well, I'm definitely not a pastor. I'm a teacher. I teach at a high school. I ain't got time for that." I already had, I was teaching at Refuge. I was teaching at Northside at that point. And was it Northside I was at? Yeah, it was Northside. And so I was like, no, I'm good. And then I go home, and Brittany's like, "You should really think about it." Like, she kind of talked me into it, to be honest with you. And so I go up there, and we just go for a Sunday to visit. And, like, apparently everybody in the congregation knew why we were there. And so everybody's like, "You're about to be our youth pastor, right?" And I was like, turns out I did. And it was, at first, I kind of treated it like a class, I guess. But then as I started to understand a little bit more of the role of being, because I actually called myself youth leader. I wouldn't use the term pastor for probably the first 3 or 4 months, because I was kind of afraid of it. But as I kind of embraced what it meant to be a pastor, and as I studied what it meant to be a pastor, it became part of who I was. I was called, like it says in Timothy. I felt the call to be there. I knew what I was there for. I knew I was doing the work of the ministry to, equip the saints.
Yeah.
So, and it was. I haven't had anything that fulfilling in my whole life, other than being youth pastor and watching these kids go from bitter, selfish, where they start, or broken, depressed, where they start, or alone and outcast, to accepted, adopted family.
Good.
Nothing better than that.
That's good. Well, I had on here why youth, but you kind of answered that for me. With my previous place, the youth position came up multiple times while I was there, and I was approached and I was like, "No, not. I love you guys. I do. I love you lots, and I'll hang out with you all day, but I can't. It's just not my calling. Not my calling, okay?"
It's a trick to being a youth pastor.
Do what?
It's a trick to being a youth
Come
pastor.
on, tell us
All right,
the trick.
if you send me a text, you're going to hear a duck go quack. You got to let everything roll off your back. It's got to be like water off your back, because they're going to say stupid stuff and do stupid stuff. Just expect it.
See, you saying that stresses me out. So there's a reason why you're called to believe you are. Well, why don't you, since you're kind of telling that whole story, you mentioned two things. I'll come back to that one. But you mentioned Refuge. Kind of just give us a little background on Refuge for those that don't kind of know any of that.
We got married in 2010, and I ran 3 programs in North Alabama that were all pretty successful. And I moved down here, and we had it was Hirschwiregrass. It was a family business, and it was great because we were running that business as a family. It was her dad, her mom, us, the nieces and nephews, the whole crew. We would do everything. Cleaning the toilets, vacuuming the carpet, mopping the mats, like everything together, and which was great. But it's exhausting to go to work full time and then teach at night all the time. So every day was exhausting. When the weekend got here, I didn't want to do anything because I was just work. And so eventually we started to think about, okay, why are we doing this? Right? Like, what's the purpose? And I was talking with some of my discipleship guys earlier about, like, I'm a very purpose. If there's no purpose to something, I'm not going to do it. I got too much to do. If I can't see the reason or the purpose behind it, I got other things I could be doing, right? And so we kind of got into discussing it, and we decided that we wanted to use our talents for the work of mission and ministry work. And so we decided that we needed to essentially give the business to God. And we did that, and a few years ago we changed the name, and we didn't really change the purpose at that point because we had already done that. It was already a Christian thing, but we wanted the name to reflect that. So Psalm 91:2 it talks about the Lord being our refuge, and that's always been a core verse for Brittany. And we decided to go. We were actually looking at something with a foundation, because a white belt means basic, or keyboard means basic foundation, and we were going to go that route, but the refuge thing just worked, and because Christ is our firm foundation. Yeah. But the refuge thing's where we landed. So.
Cool. Obviously, a blessing. That's actually how we met. Is my kids were attending there, and been a blessing. I don't know how long's Harper been going there. The kids 7 years. Okay, 7 years. There we go. All right. The boss kept up with that for us.
Correct.
7 years. So we met 7 years ago, and it was funny because we would in passing have lots of conversations. Always liked Adam. Always liked Brittany. They've been instrumental in our family for that time. So. Based off of that, let's hear how you got to Blackwood.
I mean, you could probably tell him better than I, because you knew I was coming before I did.
That is true.
So he asked me to come to Waffle House one morning. I'm never saying no to that. All right. He said, Waffle House, my treat. What time? Right? I was like, and so I went. And so I knew what I was going there for. I knew what he was going to ask me. I had been out of, I think 4 months we had been out of doing any sort of ministry, any sort of ministry work, I guess we'd say the right terminology. But it was kind of a good sabbatical that I needed. But I knew what that breakfast was for, and I went into it telling Brittany, this is what he's about to ask me. I guarantee he's going to ask me to be a youth pastor there. And she's like, probably. And I was like, maybe I shouldn't go. She was like, you should go. And then I told her, and I was like, yeah, that's what he asked me. She was like, well, you going to do it? I was like, I don't know. So she was hesitant about it because we had been, and so we came up here one day for a Sunday, and I don't think, this time nobody knew why we were here, right? So nobody was like, you're going to be the youth pastor, right? Like, no one knew why we were here. And
I think was it Easter?
It was not Easter.
Or the Sunday before Easter?
It was Palm Sunday.
Okay, yeah, Sunday before.
It was Palm Sunday, 21, 20, one of the 20s. Anyway, so,
22.
Sure. Well, I trust you, man. But we came in and, we both fell in love with Blackwood that day. And it's interesting because we live closer to Blackwood than, any other church. But we had never been. So we haven't left since. We just fell in love with the place. And actually, I kind of did the same thing. I was like, I don't know. I really don't know if I want to do it. Brittany convinced me to do it again. So she was like, you need to at least pray about it. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So I'm the hesitant pastor.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. That's good. Good to be a thank you, Brittany, again, on multiple levels. But yeah, it was pretty neat. He said it earlier. Literally, I knew, because he had been at Calvary serving, and I had gotten this pastor in August. And when did you resign from Calvary?
January.
January. Okay. And then we had D Now, because it was right after.
Yeah, I ran D Now on February 4th.
So at the end of D Now, I was like, hey, next week you want to have breakfast? And anyways, I knew he was going to be.
You were enamored with my youth pastor at Skills, is what
I just saw the water rolling off your back, and
That's
I was
what it
like,
was.
man.
That's what it was.
Oh, golly. But anyways, like I said, I knew where his theology stood. We had talks up there at Refuge, and I had that feeling, so I pursued, and that I did. That was worth a Waffle House breakfast.
I was cheap that morning.
It was.
Yeah.
It was a cheap. You were a cheap date that day.
Just a gravy biscuit. That's it.
So you told us a little bit about Refuge and what you do and all that. I do have one anonymous question that was given to me to add to today. I won't tell you who said it, but if you figure it out, that's just on you. But the question is, was everybody kung fu fighting?
Yes, Joe. Yes, they were.
Oh, I figured you could probably guess that.
Before you finished the question, I knew who had, like, before you even started the question, I was like, this was Joe.
So, kind of piggybacking off of some of that, and we've been doing testimony nights on Wednesday nights, and if you weren't here, Adam shared his testimony and the testimony they have with Wild, and so there was a lot of people here that weren't there that night. Could you kind of, I guess this is a twofold question. Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit about that testimony and how God worked through that, and then also just right now? I mean, obviously you're in the ninth hour,
similar season
of number 2, and so kind of how that's affected now, and so we got time for this one. So roll on, brother.
Okay, the youth pastor in me wants to say, never refer to something as a number 2. Anyway, okay,
see, that's why I wouldn't be a good youth pastor, right?
All right, so this is a tough one. Where to start? So this as far as testimonies are not necessarily a salvation only thing. Sometimes your testimony can be of God working in your life at a particular season. Mm-hmm. This is one of those. We are pregnant with our first child at this point, and it's June 2019. Everything was going okay. I mean, I didn't know what to expect with a pregnancy. I'd never been pregnant before, and neither had she. So we...
That'd be a miraculous conception.
Well, we go to the doctor one day, and, it was an average appointment, I thought. I knew that she had some blood pressure problems. I knew it was really high, but I didn't know what high was. Medically, I am inept, right? Completely. I have no knowledge. I know if it's bleeding, put a Band-Aid on it, right? That's about it. So we go up there, and they're saying her blood pressure's really high, and they lay her down. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that helped blood pressure. So I thought I had learned something that day. Well, they admit us to the hospital that day, and they start her on a magnesium drip that makes her very unhappy about everything. And she was not feeling well, and I said, I'm going to go back home and because I knew we were going to stay the night, I'm going to go back home and get some clothes for us. And I do, and I come back, and I'm probably not back 30 minutes before these machines start going haywire, and some small woman jumps on top of Brittany. And I don't know what she's doing, but all the numbers drop. Everything drops. And everybody in the room is freaking out, and that makes me decide I should probably freak out. So I do. And she goes completely out, and they say the words, "We've lost his heartbeat." And then they start losing hers, and they start running her out of the room, and it was one of the worst moments I don't ever want to endure that again. And I know she doesn't either. So that was terrifying. So I stopped them as they're wheeling her out of the room, because I'm afraid this is the last time I'm going to see my wife and child. And so I stop them, and I give her a kiss before they leave, and they wheel her out, and this woman that had just crawled off of her said, we're going to do the best we can for both of them. And so for the next 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I'm in a chair by myself in the hall, alone, crying like a baby. And it was tough. And at this point, this woman comes up whose name was Margaret, and she was a cleaning lady, and she prayed with me. And at this point, I'm a youth pastor who is sitting here basically trying to do what country music theology, trying to make a deal with God, take me, not her, or take me, not the baby, or whatever, And then I finally submit, and I finally just give in and say, whatever the case, Lord, I'll serve you. And within seconds, I hear my son cry for the first time, and they wheel him out, and I get to see him, and it was one of the most beautiful moments of my life, and one of the most tragic moments almost of my life. It was terrifying. It was terrible. But that day, I get a random message online from somebody I haven't seen in years. His name was Mark, and he messages me asking me about the situation, but not necessarily the situation, but why I'm talking about God in the situation. And so in the next couple of days, through me talking to him and him going to visit where my mom's church is, because he's 4.5 hours away, and he was somebody that I thought I had just kind of given up on seeing again ever. He had gotten into all sorts of bad stuff, drugs, all of the theft, and all the different things. And he actually just did his testimony, I think it was last night or the night before, at my mom's church, which was really great. But I was able to lead him to Christ during my crisis story. But it wasn't me necessarily leading him to Christ, but Christ used me as part of his, whether it was, me or the people in that church too. But he used my crisis story to initiate that. And then now, like, it took a lot of us trusting in God to decide to have a second child. I mean, it took a lot of trust after that. And while I was born at 29 and a half weeks, we are at 34-ish, 34 Friday. And so 34 is kind of the magic number, apparently. And so the goal is May 29th. But, I mean, at this point, it's all gravy. It's great. And we're really excited to be in this position, because this is what we were praying for back in December. We were praying for not April. It's May 1st.
Amen. That's right.
So, just got the eyeballs, Harper.
He did.
So,
He didn't let it roll off his back.
no, I
I
didn't.
told you. You would think with no hair it'd roll off my head, but it don't do that either.
Yeah. I hope that, I don't know, I don't remember the question, but that's,
Yeah. No,
Okay.
no, that's yeah. I'm gonna dig deep, because just one part that always stood out to me too is through all that, God's faithfulness and how maybe you don't see it in the moment
at all.
but he shows himself. And I know there were some medical bills and stuff, and that's
Oh, I
too
didn't
good
talk
not
about
to
that.
share.
Yeah,
That's too
yeah.
good not to share.
I don't know the exact numbers. Do you remember? It's like 15,600 or something. It was crazy, but our insurance was apparently garbage. We didn't realize that. So they come in, they came in and told us, hey, we're gonna need to do something, because you're about to max out, because he's in the NICU for a long time, and we're in the second week. They're like, yeah, we need to look at doing something, because apparently we didn't know our insurance was garbage.
We're just gonna pay for it.
Yeah. And so they basically said we're not. And so it just turned out to where his medical bills were covered with all kids, which was great. And we didn't know anything about that, because we'd never been parents before. And so that was great. But outside of that, the other medical bills were like $15,000. And, I mean, we didn't have $15,000. So between Calvary and we were at Bethlehem too for a while, they both decided to do a love offering, which was completely out of refuge people. Like, people from refuge decided to do that. And we had been at both churches, and we had just started at Calvary. And so we were fresh out of Bethlehem and fresh into Calvary. And between the two of them, they raised to the dollar exactly how much those bills turned out. It was crazy.
And 16 cents.
Yeah, it was crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna put a pin in that for a second, and we'll come back. Okay, but you talked about when you went to Calvary, and even just referring to yourself as leader for a while, because
Yeah.
that pastor title was kind of off-putting. You need to be off-putting, but it was kind of set you back a little bit. And,
It's a burden. It was a responsibility.
because it's a big responsibility,
Yeah.
right? And we've talked about it with all the elders here. We've gone through it. I'm going to go through it too, just the same. We get the qualifications for elders in 1 Timothy chapter 3. I'm going to read through them, and then I got a question. So it says, it is a trustworthy statement that if any man aspires to the office of overseer, which overseer, elder, same Greek word, it's fine work that he desires to do. An overseer then must be above reproach, the husband of one wife, temperate, prudent, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not addicted to wine, but gentle, peaceable, free from the love of money. He must be one who manages his own household well, keeping his children under control with all dignity. But if a man does not know how to manage his own household, how will he take care of the church of God? Not a new convert, so that he will not become conceited and fall into the condemnation incurred by the devil. And he must have a good reputation with those outside the church, so that he will not fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. So, first, which of those qualifications just really jump out at you? Or multiple? Which
Something
one
I
kinda
struggled
grabs you?
with in our early part of our marriage was the love of money. Because it's like I said, when I was younger, I was very self-centered. And I saw that growing up, we grew up like poor. Like dad was a factory worker, poor. And we, country folks, we lived between two cow pastures and a cornfield. So I saw money as the way for me to live that next level up that I wanted to achieve. And so it was a real struggle for me to put that, and it wasn't me that put that away, it was the Holy Spirit that did it. But we talk about how in one of our memory verses in Matthew 5, it talks about if your arm causes you to sin, cut it off. I completely handed over, I had to, because I tried to micromanage every dollar that went in and out of our house. I had to hand it completely over to Brittany because I realized I was putting a strain on our marriage. And this is, second year we're married? I was putting a strain on our marriage, and I was trying to control her through that, and I knew that was wrong. And so I eventually told her, I need you to take this, and it's not because I can't do it. It's because I don't need to do it. It's better for both of us if I get hands off because I have an idol. And so that was the big one for me that I had to overcome. But I don't know if that's the question you're asking. If you're thinking the one that sticks out as like a problem to me, or
No, just whatever just grabs you, and how does it grab you? So
yeah, I think for most men that's a tough one. Like we want to be the provider, and so that's a tough one for me. But I think a lot of men struggle with that one. So that's I think a high thing to put in there. It's a high standard, which I think is a good thing.
Good. So that being the case, though, like I know it was a big deal to be called pastor, and so like just give me a little why. Why is it a big deal? What's it mean to you, the elder pastor, that overseer, that idea?
This isn't the answer I think most people are going to expect, but I see it as a lot of people see it as a blessing and this responsibility that's like this high calling, and I do see that, but I see it as a burden, and I don't mean that in the way it sounds. I see it as a burden in the same way as I see protecting my family as a burden. When I walk into a big room, I don't walk into a big room and just let my kids go, right? I make sure they're safe. I use this one a lot. I don't let my son run around in parking lots. It's not safe. I'm going to take care of it. So in the same way, I see being a pastor as a burden out of love. I love being a pastor, and I take this burden happily. I would happily carry it. I think one way, we had a kind of going joke when Wild was born. So we had to go back and forth to the NICU for how many days?
43 and then 44 more.
And so after we get out of the NICU, we have to go back for it was my birthday. We have to go back to the hospital. It was right before school started, and like it was a big mess. But I became the pack mule, And when there was something that he carried, she had just gone through all the stuff that she had gone through. So I carried everything, and I had a lot of stuff on all of the huge bag that she had everything loaded. No offense, Brittany. Everything that could have been needed was in that bag, right? And so I toted that thing around for, 7 weeks, but after that, like I was the pack mule for a couple of years, right? And so until Wild could carry his own stuff, I'm like, you carry that, boy. I ain't carrying that no more, right? But so in the same way, like I would carry that bag to the day I died if I needed to, happily. In the same way, I see being a pastor as that bag. It's filled with stuff for the ones I love.
Cool. That's an awesome answer, man. Thanks. I may borrow that next week.
I charge royalties.
So you answered kind of your favorite part about youth ministry with the growth and seeing the change of the youth. Kind of, I took that as that answer. And I had written down, how do you handle the stress? You answered that too. So my question geared towards youth ministry now is, give me a story. Give me, and it can be funny, it can be give me a story that when I say, tell me about being a youth ministry, you gotta be like, listen to what happened, or so.
Whew. I don't know. Okay.
That's a good one.
Buddy. That's the story. No, I think one of the most defining things as far as like what it looks like to be a youth pastor actually does come from Buddy, and you had to deal with it in Istanbul.
Oh my gosh.
So Buddy disappeared in Winter Extreme for like 10 minutes, and we're like, where did Buddy go? And nobody was really concerned because he's got the duck thing down. It rolls off his back, right? And all of a sudden, he's in line to sing. And like, we're like, what is he doing in line to sing? I didn't know, right? And so he just gets up there with this random kid he just met who had a guitar, who apparently he could not play the guitar. He was awful. And Buddy was awful at singing. And who was the other kid that was with him? I don't even remember.
It was 3 of them.
Just random people Buddy had made friends with in front of the dispensary, and and that's where they made friends, by the way. They made friends in front of the dispensary in Pigeon Forge or Gatlinburg, whichever one it was, and I was like, that tracks. And so, he had just bought the guitar. That's right. And so they're in line, and I couldn't find Buddy for, what was it, 10, 15 minutes. I'm like, where is Buddy? Because it was getting like, this is the last performance, and we're leaving. And like, we got to find this kid. Like, he had already got lost in Turkey.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, here we go.
Not lost. Just
he was in the Lego store. Anyway, so
wait for a second.
Well, this was more in a second. I was like, this kid's gone, right? I tried calling him, and that didn't work because there was no cell phone service in there. And so finally, I think it was Josie actually spots him. And she's like, oh, there he is. He's in line. I was like, what the heck is he in line for? He can't sing. He gets up there and sings the worst song of all time. It was Sweet Home Alabama, but it wasn't. They did so bad that the guy who had the microphone that was interviewing them and trying to get them to sing, he actually played the guitar and sang it for him because he felt bad enough for him. So that's what youth ministry looks like as far as like what you can expect from the kids. But then you can also look at like the difference. I'm not going to use anybody here as an example because I think they'd be embarrassed. But you can look at the difference in somebody that, like I've had one kid that I've kind of discipled since he was in the 7th grade, and he's graduating this year, and a lot of you guys will probably know who I'm talking about, who went from an angry kid who treated his parents like garbage to somebody that I will trust to stand up in front of a group of people and share a word from the Bible about. Like the difference in seeing somebody who I actually stopped a taekwondo testing for because he was mistreating someone and I failed him on the spot, to someone who will stand in front of his peers and talk about the Bible for 20 minutes. That's the fruit. That's the good stuff. But I mean, youth ministry is like a Sour Patch Kid. You know what I mean? If you know, you know. It's a little sweet, but you got to get through the sour too. There's going to be some sour, but you got to be a duck.
That's right. A duck. There we go. First, I think there's probably, for future reference, there's probably money in the youth budget for one of those little like monkey backpacks that has like this that you hold on. That's like a leash for the kids for the next buddy. So
nope. You won't get those good stories if you do that.
That's true. So kind of winding down, kind of the same question, kind of been with all of them. Like, give us nugget besides being a duck. give us a nugget of knowledge.
Took
from
it away. That's all I
the
got.
Youth pastor. Yeah.
Be intentional. Everything you do. I was just talking about this earlier. Whatever you're doing, don't just do it. Be intentional about what you do. Mean to do what you do. Live life in such a way that everything you do, you meant to do. If you find yourself in a situation where you don't know what to do, mean to get out of it. I think it was Myron that said, if you're in very important. So be intentional about everything.
That's good. That's good. I will let you know that I tried to tell that the other day, and I messed it up. I was carrot, green bean, and coffee bean. But they got the gist.
You can use a carrot instead of a green bean, though.
Okay,
I've heard the carrot instead of
that's what
green bean.
confused me because I've heard it both green bean and carrot, but I
Yeah.
use both of them. But it made them both mushy. But
Well, nobody- how many
the
of you guys
coffee
eat
bean
green
changed
beans?
the water. That's all that matters.
I don't
That's all
know.
that
Some
matters.
green beans change the water. I don't know.
So two more things. Second to last thing, probably.
Do you guys notice he said winding down? Now he's got two more things.
Yeah. This one's short. But I think it's probably one of the most important questions we ask of the night. Who is your all-time favorite pastor?
Phil Craddock. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
No, I don't have a favorite. Boom.
This is Mr. Jolly.
Oh no, I really don't have a favorite. Phil's got that. He's the OG for me.
Yeah.
I mean, you're up there somewhere. To maybe top 5 or so.
That's
You're
all
all right.
I'll take top 5.
I've got a few good influences. I really do. But the one who discipled me is Phil Craddock. So I mean, there's that relationship that, I mean, that's a bond right there. I'm always going to have, for sure.
That's good. So to close, I got something that just prompted right here at the end. First, just real quick, kind of just, if you don't mind, just share a little bit about this season with Gus on the way, and just kind of what's been going on in the past, and just give me a little bit about this season. You're almost to the end of this one, and we're coming down, and then I got something right after that we'll end on. So if you don't mind sharing.
I don't know, season-wise, I think the right word is busy. But I love it. I love it. Like I said, I'm very purpose-driven. So I wake up in the morning and I go do things, and I'm always doing something. But when I'm doing things, like knowing that I'm kind of in nesting mode, I'm preparing for him to, like, so I've got this goal in the near future of him coming home. For us, our goal was always with him, healthy. And we do not want to see a NICU again. But knowing that we're preparing for him to come home, I feel like, and she'll remember this really well, when we did Wild's bedroom, we did his wall like the inside cover of where the wild things are, and then I built a train that went all the way around the top of his room out of yardsticks. So apparently there's no such thing as a yardstick that's straight. And so I had to like bend those little jokers. It took days and days and days. But like when we were doing that, it was so fulfilling because we knew what we were doing it for, right? I feel like everything I'm doing right now is that. Like I'm preparing for him to come. I'm preparing for him to come. And we're so excited. I mean, we're so excited. And he's getting wiggly and more and more wiggly by the day at this point. And like, it's awesome. It's awesome. It's a great season. You go through dry spells, you go through different seasons. We are definitely in a good season and I know there's like, I'm enjoying it a lot more because I'm not super pregnant, right? Correct. Out of the mouth of John Mason. All right, so refocus. Here we go. That's very politically incorrect of you to say, John Mason. But we're in a great season as a family right now. We have a 4-year-old, smart, rambunctious little joker that is just fun to be around, who is awesome. And we've got this one on the way, and Wild loves him immensely already. And we're looking forward to the next few months, is what we are. Especially this summer's going to be great. It's going to be great.
Good. Okay, so here's how we're going to close up. I'm going to put y'all together. Brady, I'm going to ask you to come up here, sit in my chair, and then I think there's nothing better to do than just the whole church pray for you. So get them two up here side by side, and then I'll just ask, feel comfortable, come up. We lay hands. So we're going to lay hands and pray for them as they finish and what God's doing through them and for them and protection and all those good things. So, Brittany, if you'll come on up.